Hey, when I was your age, I was one of the kids that was at anything that the youth group did. Anytime that the church was open, I was there. Some of you are like that. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for being a part of what we do. But anytime that we were doing something, I was always there. Retreats, service projects. In fact, even when I was in high school, think about this for a second. When I was in high school, we had a Tuesday morning before school Bible study. Did that fly over with you guys? Would you participate in that? Just curious, okay? But it was like at 6:30. I guess you go to FCA. You're a part of stuff like that. But I was always there. But here I am, years later, and do you want to know something? I can't think of one thing that I remember from a talk like this, right? Where someone was on the stage or in front of the group and gave a message or gave a lesson or something like that. I can't tell you one thing that I learned from that. Now, I do believe that everything that I learned along the way was probably important, right? It's not like I didn't ever listen. That's not true. But I just don't remember the things that were taught to me from a stage, a specific thing. But I was there. You want to know the things that I remember? I remember, I met my wife at youth group, and so that was one thing that I always remember, right? And now that I think about it, maybe that was the reason why I don't remember a whole lot. Maybe I was distracted. But we met at youth group when I was in high school. But the things that I remember most specifically are the relationships. I can remember who was in my small group. All these years later, I can remember who was in my small group. And my group was pretty small. There was only about 4 of us, but I remember all of them. I remember my leaders, Chris and Brian. I remember when they opened their home to me. I remember when I was going through things and struggling, or when Shelby dumped me a couple times, and they were there for me, and they helped me get her back and all that kind of stuff. But I remember the relationships, and I remember my friends, and I remember some of the experiences that we had together. I remember the open door that I had with those people and in their homes and in those groups. I remember the community that we had. That's what stuck with me all of those years. Now, as we talk about this series, Atomic, and we've been looking at the small but important things that build your faith, we have looked at, maybe you've forgotten already, but we've looked at reading the Word, and we've talked about praying. And tonight, what we're going to look at is the importance of community. What it looks like, and why it's important for you to dive into a relationship of community here within the church. I can show you why this matters before we go any further. The Barna Study Research Group has done a study on millennials and why they stayed in the church. Now, I know you guys aren't millennials, you're Gen Z, but they haven't had enough time with Gen Z to actually do this type of study. So we're talking about millennials, okay? And they've talked about and looked at the reasons why they stayed in church, right? Because as you guys know, as people grow up, and for some of you, unfortunately, as you grow up and get older, you may leave church. That's not what we want. That's not what we hope to see, but that's what the statistics show us. So why are the people that stay and stick around in their faith, why are they staying? Is what one of their research groups went to discover. And they discovered that the number one reason that young people stay in the church is relationships with older people. And so here's what David Kinnaman said about this, who led this group. He says, "Yet among those who remain active, this much is clear. The most positive church experiences among millennials are relational. This stands true from the inverse angle as well. 7 out of 10 millennials who dropped out of church did not have a close friendship with an adult, and nearly 9 out of 10 never had a mentor at the church." And so, developing relationships within the church is a significant factor into you remaining as a part of the church body as you get older. That's what the statistics show us. And one of the best things about being involved in a group is that we have that for you. We have leaders, your leader here, who wants to be I don't know how you look at them, but they are an adult, okay? And so they want to be this adult. They want to be this mentor. They want to be this adult friend for you. Now, you may say to me, well, I don't know, I know you're here, but you may say something like, well, I don't have to be a part of that to be a part of the church. I don't have to go to church to be the church. And that might be true, but I also don't have to live in my home to be married to my wife, right? But the longer that I stay away, the worse my connection is going to get, right? And the same is true with you. And within the church and within a group and a community, the longer that you stay away, The longer that you choose other things over being involved in something like that, the worse that your connection will get with the church. So this is going to be our conversation tonight. All this to say, community is really important. In fact, we get a really clear picture of this as we look at the early church and some of the things that happened with them, and that's where we're going to dive tonight. Right after the Apostle Peter gave the very first gospel message, okay? Jesus had risen, he had spent some time with the disciples and appeared to people and everything like that. Well, then he had left, and now Pentecost comes, and Peter steps up, and he gives the very first gospel message to people, and the Lord does some miraculous things, and 3,000 people come to be Christians that day. Can you imagine the explosion within the church when this happens? I mean, it was a small group of people, maybe a couple hundred people that were considered followers of Jesus, and now all of a sudden 3,000 people get added to this cause, this following of Jesus on this day. And so the church explodes, and then this is the description of what it began to look like for them. This may be familiar with you, but it's in Acts chapter 2, starting in verse 42. It's on the screen. Luke writes this: all the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to sharing in meals, including the Lord's Supper, and to prayer. A deep sense of awe came over them all, and the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders. And all the believers, they met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions, and they shared the money with those in need. They worshiped together at the temple each day. They met in homes for the Lord's Supper and shared meals with great joy and generosity, all the while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people. And each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. It's an amazing description. It's not something that we see every day here, but it's an amazing description of what the early church experienced as they lived in community together. And so, what I want to do is give you three ideas, actually three truths about community, and help you to see the importance of this, especially as we head into group season. Your small groups start this week. It's a perfect opportunity for you to dive in and to accomplish this right away. So here's the first idea that I have for you, is that community takes commitment. It might just happen organically for some of you, but it can only sustain with a commitment. Look what it said at the very beginning, what we read. All the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to sharing in meals, including the Lord's Supper, and to prayer. That word devoted right there in the middle is important. It's this Greek word, and it means to attend constantly. Okay? To attend constantly. So they constantly attended this teaching and this fellowship and these meals and this prayer. They were always there. They were constantly there. There was a commitment. All of them did it. To find community, you have to be committed. You have to be devoted. Now, let me pull back the curtain a little bit for you and let you know a little bit something about how we do things here. Last week, all of our small group leaders, we met together, we had a meal together, and we were trained together, and we talked about what we believe are the 5 principles of being a great small group leader, okay? I don't know if you know this. It doesn't happen by chance. Some of them are natural. Some of them need a little training, okay? But we go through these principles and we talk about them. And the number one principle, like again, I'm pulling this back so you can see what we talk about. The number one thing that we say is that you need to be present. You have to be present with your group. They can't question and wonder when you're going to be there or when you're not going to be there. You have to show up consistently. And so all of your small group leaders have been challenged and have this expectation to show up consistently here and on Wednesdays and to be present in your life. They are challenged to constantly attend, to devote themselves to meeting together with you. Now, their biggest challenge, honestly, is getting you to feel the same way. Is getting you to feel that same type of devotion, that same type of constant attendance where they don't have to wonder whether you're going to be there or not. They know they're always going to be there. Now, some of you do a great job at this, and some of us need a little bit of help. So we have to see the value, the importance of community and meeting together, to devote ourselves to being there. It takes a commitment. So my question is what for you, what needs to happen for you to take that to the next step, to take it a step further than you have? Do you need to make some type of commitment? Do you need to tell your small group leader, hey, get with me. If I miss, ask me, don't let me do this. Maybe it's for somebody else. Maybe there's somebody else that you need to reach out to and be like, hey, man or girl, whatever. Like, you haven't been here in a while. Where have you been? Like, we should be committed to this. And so what does it look like for you to live this out a little bit? Here's the second idea that I have for you, is that community is purposeful. It's purposeful. What you do in these groups, in these spaces, these faith communities, is purposeful. Go back to what we read. I love this. This is fascinating. All the believers, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and the sharing of meals and to prayer. There was a purpose behind what they did. And I hope that you know this, but all of our groups, the reason that you're here in this space, the reason that we do groups and all this kind of stuff, is because we have a purpose. We're all united behind what Jesus has done for each and every one of us. This isn't some social club where we just get together to have fun. What unites us is what Jesus has done for us on the cross and through his resurrection. That is the purpose behind what we do. This Christian community in the early church was different than any other community that was meeting. It was very different. In fact, this continued for years and years, that this practice of the early church was doing this. They were meeting for teaching and fellowship, sharing of meals, and for prayer. In fact, there's documentation from the Roman Empire, who ruled over like the Jews and during the first century and beyond, of what this group looked like. In fact, as the years go on, there was this guy named Trajan, who was a Roman emperor, and he started to see like the rise of Christian and started to worry about it. So he put this guy named Pliny, who was like a governor of a region, to start researching what are these Christians doing. Why are they meeting? How can we stop this, right? Because we don't want this to spread. Like, Rome is in control, we're in control. And so Pliny, he does this research and he does this investigation about the Christians. He's trying to find a way, as Rome, to step in and say, yeah, you can't do that. Let's just get rid of you, right? Let's just chop you off, whatever. And so Pliny does all this research and he writes this letter back to Trajan, the Roman emperor. And this is what he said. He says, they asserted, however, that the sum and the substance of their fault or error had been that they were accustomed to meeting on a fixed day before dawn and sing responsively a hymn to Christ as to a God. This is what he discovered. That they weren't plotting together to do anything evil. They weren't trying to overthrow the empire. They weren't doing anything like that. What were they doing? They were just singing songs together. And they did it constantly. On a fixed day before dawn, they came together and they sang to Christ as their God. This is what the Roman Empire investigated and discovered about the early church. They constantly met together. It was purposeful. Now, if we go back to verse 42, I want you to see this. Now, trust me, don't think that I was this strategic or planned this on my own, but their outline was pretty much what it looks like to be in a small group. They met together for teaching. You do that in your small groups, right? Fellowship, you probably play some type of game together, at least in the groups that I lead, that's what we did. Meals, there's probably always Doritos or something there, right? And to prayer. This is the outline of what it means and looks like to be a part of a small group. In the early church, this was what they did. They were accustomed to meeting on a fixed day every week to live in community and to do these things. And this is what we want you to do, to be purposeful in how you meet. And you can model yourself after the first church. Don't miss this. What happens in these groups is very much what the Spirit was guiding these people to do in the first century. Here's the last idea that I have for you, is that community has benefits. Okay, follow me. Right in the middle of this description, we saw this. All the believers, they met together in one place and they shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. They shared and they took care of each other. And in your community, the community will have benefits for those that are involved. This is true for your group. This is true for the people that you connect with, right? It will have benefits. You will have people that care for you. You will have people that are in your corner. You will have adults that are behind the scenes praying for you by name, and the things that you are going through, the things that you share as prayer requests, you'll be taken care of. In fact, I love this quote from a guy named G.K. Chesterton, who says this: "The man who lives in a small community lives in a much larger world." When you devote and you invest in a smaller community, you actually reap the benefits a whole lot more. A community of believers can help you when you need it the most. I know I was trying to think of some examples of this from my life, and I thought of too many to share. And maybe you can as well, of ways that a need has been met or something like that, where the community has stepped in and helped. A group will be there at the very, very worst times, right? When something tragic happens, we've seen this happen. I've seen this happen. I've been a part of this. I've been in this circle where a group of people will be there for you at the very worst of times and support you and love you and pray with you and walk it through with you. But they'll also be there often at the very best of times, right? When things are going great, or when you've achieved something and your group is there to celebrate with you. This is important. We have to be a part of this. So what do I want you to do? I want you to be a part of a community. I want you to recognize the importance of this, that Jesus lived in community. He had his 12 disciples, even had 3 that he spent a whole lot of time with. He invested in a group of people. The early church recognized this and modeled this, what this looks like. We have to model this and make this a part of our life as well. And here's why. Reading your Bible and praying are very solo acts often, right? The things that you can do on your own, by yourself. It's how you connect with God. Community, it's a whole lot harder because you have to choose to take a part of that. You have to invest a part of yourself to make that happen. The benefits of it are long-term. Again, these are things that we're talking about, not because right now as listen to me for a second, not just right now as high school students where I want you to be a part of a small group or something like that. These are the things that if you get down right now, if you figure out right now, the rest of your life will be different. And if you want to dive into this later in life, maybe you can figure it out, but these are the things that say, if you want your faith to continue after high school, and for this to be something as a part of who you are, and not just a fad as an adolescent that you got a part of, or that your parents made you go to church, this is a part of who you are, then you need to learn how to read your Bible, you need to learn how to pray on your own, and you need to dive in and to be some part of a community. These are the people, 7 out of 10, who stay within the church, found this. The others didn't. And so you have to have this type of community. You can ask some of the people who have graduated here the type of community that can continue after this. So, my bottom line is not surprising, but I want you to make it a habit to live in community with others. Many of you do this already, so maybe the challenge for you is, if that's not the challenge for you, like, man, I'm already there, I'm already doing that, maybe the challenge is to bring somebody in or to bring somebody back who needs this, who needs a group of believers who are behind them. We have to begin to do this. Join your group, live in community. It's a small thing, but the benefits will be for a long time.